Beneath the Crimson Skies, The Forgotten Chronicles of the Timekeeper's Daughter. Chapter 1, The Last Chime of Eldro Keep. The skies bled crimson as dusk descended upon the shattered spires of Eldro Keep. The air shimmered with a strange charge, the kind that lingered in the wake of broken time. Atop the highest tower, where no ordinary child was ever meant to tread, stood a girl no older than 16, her copper hair whipping like wildfire in the wind. Lyra Valameyer, daughter of the last Timekeeper, pressed her hand to the face of the rusted chronocrypt. The device had once pulsed with golden light, its ticking heartbeat keeping the flow of time steady throughout the 5 realms. Now, it was silent, cold. Just like her father. "Tell me," she whispered to the silent machine, her voice catching. "Where did he go?" The sky above cracked with thunder, not from any storm, but from a rupture in the fabric of time itself. Lyra didn't flinch. She had grown up with the stories of veils between worlds, of time streams twisted by ancient wars, of her bloodline tasked with guarding the last strand of true time. But no story had prepared her for this. Behind her, the wind howled through the shattered arches. She reached into her satchel and pulled out the chronolium, a crystal vial pulsing with threads of light and memory. Her father had left it for her in the old pendulum chamber, wrapped in a ciphered letter and sealed with his signet, the Ouroboros wrapped around an hourglass. She raised the chronolium to the dying sky. The light flickered, then flared, and the world shifted. A pulse of energy threw her back against the stone. Visions struck her like lightning, cities crumbling in reverse, a tree blooming and dying in a breath, her father's hand reaching through smoke, screaming her name. Then it was gone. Lyra gasped, the vial warm in her palm. "He's not dead," she whispered. From the shadows at the edge of the chamber, a voice answered, low, metallic, and unmistakably not human. "No," it rasped, "but if you wish to find him, you must break the Keeper's oath." She turned sharply. A figure stepped into view, cloaked in shifting light, neither man nor shadow, a relic warden, a guardian of lost time. Lyra's heart pounded. Breaking the oath means? Unbinding time itself, the warden finished. She looked back at the silent chronocrypt, then at the blood-red sky. "I'll do it," she said, her voice hard as stone. "I'll find him, even if I must walk through the cracks of time to do it." The warden bowed. Then the Forgotten Chronicle begins. Would you like Chapter 2 or a summary of how the rest of the story unfolds? Certainly, here's Chapter 2 of Beneath the Crimson Skies, The Forgotten Chronicles of the Timekeeper's Daughter. Chapter 2, Through the Fractured Gate. The path to the past was not a road but a wound, a tear in the weave of time, stitched closed with secrets and sealed with sacrifice. Lyra stood at the edge of the fractured gate, her fingers clenched around the chronolium, still pulsing with ghost light. The relic warden drifted beside her, more shimmer than shape. "Only blood can open what has been sealed by blood," it said, extending a hand of flickering light toward the stone dais carved into the tower's floor. She stepped forward, her boots echoing on the cold stone. Ancient glyphs stirred under her approach, glowing faintly with recognition. This was her birthright, and her burden. Her father had kept her from it all her life, and now it was all she had left. Drawing the ceremonial dagger from her belt, the one her father had given her just in case, Lyra slashed her palm. Her blood, bright and defiant, sizzled as it met the ancient symbols. The tower trembled. The air cracked. Time peeled open. Before her, the stone floor split with a sound like shattering glass, revealing a vortex of memory, images swirling like leaves caught in a storm, forgotten cities, ancient wars, winged machines, and timekeepers long dead. And at the center of it all, her father, bound in a prison made of frozen seconds. She gasped. "He's trapped in the unmoored spiral." The relic warden nodded. "A place outside of time, where only timekeepers may tread, and only one born of their line can walk in and return." Lyra took a deep breath, her hand trembling as the gate widened into a tunnel of flickering moments. "Then I guess it's time I learned who I really am." Without waiting for another word, she stepped into the vortex. The sensation was unlike anything she'd ever felt, falling and flying all at once, memories folding in around her, whispering secrets in languages she'd never learned but somehow understood. Time wasn't a river here, it was a storm. And Lyra was its eye. When she opened her eyes again, the world was not as it had been. She stood in a city where the sun never rose, a place lit by the soft pulse of floating clocks and towering mirrors. Shadows walked without masters, voices echoed without mouths. This was the mirror hold, the first layer of the spiral, where every possibility lived in fractured reflection. She took a step forward, and one of the clocks turned toward her, its face bending into a cruel smile. "Daughter of time," it said, "you shouldn't be here." "But I am," she replied, lifting the chronolium as its light expanded, cutting through illusion and time alike. Behind her, something stirred in the mirrors, a figure, cloaked, chained, and watching. Not her father. Another. A girl, her own face, but older, eyes cold, marked with a scar she had never received. The reflection spoke with her voice, "You will fail." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "Not this time." And then the chase began. Would you like to continue with Chapter 3, or a summary of the major arcs ahead? Absolutely, here's Chapter 3 of Beneath the Crimson Skies, The Forgotten Chronicles of the Timekeeper's Daughter. Chapter 3, The Girl Who Was and Was Not. The mirror hold bent reality like heat bends light, truths refracted, twisted into beautiful lies. Lyra sprinted through the corridors of glass, her breath sharp, her reflections shifting with every step. Dozens of versions of herself blinked in and out of the corners of her vision, some familiar, some monstrous, all possible. Behind her, the scarred reflection followed, silent, relentless. She ducked beneath a shattered archway as a wave of temporal feedback cracked the glass above her. Fragments rained like stardust, revealing moments from her past frozen inside each shard, her first steps, her father's laugh, the day the chronocrypt died. "You can't run from yourself forever," the reflection called. Lyra didn't answer. She didn't know how. Instead, she pressed the chronolium to the nearest mirror. Its light surged, pushing the surface into rippling motion, a gateway. She stepped through and emerged into a world wrapped in silence. It was a field of tall silver grass beneath a night sky where stars moved backward. In the distance stood a broken tower made of bone and brass, ticking slowly, like the heartbeat of a dying god. She wasn't alone. At the base of the tower, hunched over a torn tapestry of timelines, stood a boy her age, pale skin, eyes like storm glass. When he looked up, he didn't seem surprised to see her. "You made it," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "Do I know you?" He smiled faintly. "Not yet, but I've known you my whole life. Name's Corin. I'm what happens when a timeline is erased, but doesn't die." She frowned. "You're a paradox." He nodded. "And so are you." Before she could speak again, the sky above them screamed, a rift tearing open in the heavens. The scarred reflection stepped through, but this time she wasn't alone. Time phantoms, creatures stitched from broken seconds, poured out behind her. "They're coming for the chronolium," Corin said. "If they get it, your father's timeline collapses for good." Lyra turned to face the enemy. "Then let them come." Corin drew a blade made of mirrored time. Lyra gripped the chronolium tight, feeling it sink with her heartbeat. The tower behind them began to chime, once, then again, echoes of what once was. The battle began. Time unraveled. And far away, in the core of the spiral, a pair of golden eyes flickered open. The true timekeeper had awoken. Would you like Chapter 4 next? Or a glimpse into how the story arc will evolve from here? Here is Chapter 4 of Beneath the Crimson Skies, The Forgotten Chronicles of the Timekeeper's Daughter. Chapter 4, The Clockwork Rebellion. Steel clashed with starlight as Lyra and Corin fought side by side beneath the fractured sky. The time phantoms moved in loops, vanishing and reappearing mid-strike, but Lyra was learning to see their patterns, to hear the rhythm of the broken world. The chronolium pulsed in her grip, guiding her hands, whispering a harmony older than memory. Corin shouted beside her, cutting down a phantom that dissolved into a burst of midnight smoke. "They're endless. We need to reach the tower. The chime will sync us with the next layer of the spiral." Lyra nodded. The tower loomed above them, its walls shifting between centuries, one moment ancient and overgrown, the next gleaming with future alloy. Together, they sprinted toward it, the phantoms giving chase, the scarred reflection floating above the battlefield like a fallen star. Inside the tower, the ticking was deafening. It was the sound of every second that had ever passed, all ticking at once. The entry chamber was filled with floating gears, each spinning in perfect time. In the center hovered a vast mechanism, the heart of reversal, a lost timekeeper engine, capable of rewinding not just events, but choices. Corin looked to Lyra. If we power it, it can open the core gate of the spiral. But it needs a tether, she realized, a living link to a fixed timeline. He nodded grimly. One of us has to stay behind, or both of us could be erased. She hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. No, there's another way. She stepped forward and raised the chronolium. Its light merged with the heart, and something deep in the tower began to stir. The gears shifted, time bent inward, and then a voice echoed through the chamber. Lyra. She turned slowly, her heart stilled. Her father stood in the doorway, pale but alive, his robes tattered, his eyes burning with golden fire. You shouldn't have come, he said. She ran to him. I had to. I saw you. He stopped her with a look. You saw a version of me. I've been trapped between strands, held by the spiral itself. But you've done something no timekeeper ever dared. Behind them, the chronolium blazed. The walls of the tower peeled away, revealing the final layer of the spiral, the Echo Sanctum, a realm where the first timeline still whispered. I can fix this, Lyra said. I can reset it. We can free the timeline. Her father's face darkened. You can, but not without cost. What cost? He looked past her, to Corin. He's a fracture, an echo that shouldn't exist. If you seal the timeline, he will be erased. Corin stepped forward, silent. Lyra stared at him, torn. The boy who'd helped her survive, who might not even be real. But he was here, he had fought. I won't choose, she said fiercely. There has to be another way. The scarred reflection descended into the tower then, her voice a cruel echo. There isn't. But Lyra held the chronolium to her heart. And rewrote the rules. Time split. Again. Two paths diverged, one where Corin lived, one where he didn't. Both true, both false. And Lyra Valamire walked both at once. The true chronicle had only just begun. Would you like to continue into Chapter 5? Or see a full outline of how the story will progress toward its climax? Here's Chapter 5 of Beneath the Crimson Skies, The Forgotten Chronicles of the Timekeeper's Daughter. Chapter 5, Fractures of Fate. Lyra stood at the crossroads of infinite time, where every choice birthed a new reality. Around her, the fractured layers of the spiral whispered, their echoes weaving into a complex tapestry of what was, what could be, and what must never happen. The chronolium's light surged, splitting her vision into two parallel paths. In one, Corin smiled, stepping forward to join her. Together, they faced the shadowed reflection, a twisted version of herself bound by regret and bitterness. In the other, Corin dissolved into nothingness, leaving Lyra alone, clutching the weight of a timeline that refused to heal. Her heart fractured alongside the timelines. Could she hold both realities? Was she the salvation of one or the doom of the other? A cold wind stirred, and her father's voice echoed through the chamber. Daughter, time is not a river you sail. It is a web you weave. The threads you touch will alter everything, and sometimes, what you save, you must also lose. The scarred reflection stepped closer, her voice a razor. Accept your fate, Lyra. Become the true timekeeper, or watch your world burn. With every breath, Lyra felt the burden of the keeper's oath settle like iron chains. But deep inside, something else awoke, a new power born from the fracture, the ability to mend the broken threads without breaking the whole. She raised the chronolium, its light fracturing into a prism of hope. This ends now, Lyra declared. Time answered. The spiral twisted and bent as she wove her will through the layers, stitching shattered moments into a new pattern. Corin reappeared at her side, whole, real, alive. Her father stepped forward, freed at last from his prison of frozen seconds. And the scarred reflection faded, finally at peace. Beneath the crimson skies, a new dawn broke, not of endings, but of beginnings. The forgotten chronicle was remembered. Would you like me to keep going with the story, or perhaps write an epilogue or explore the backgrounds of any characters? Here's Chapter 6. Continuing the journey of Beneath the Crimson Skies, The Forgotten Chronicles of the Timekeeper's Daughter. Chapter 6, The Dawn of New Time. The crimson skies softened, bleeding into shades of gold and violet. As if the world itself breathed a sigh of relief, the shattered layers of the spiral settled, their fractures knitting together under Lyra's steady hand. She stood at the summit of Eldro Keep once more, the chronolium now a steady, warm glow in her palm. Around her, time flowed with a quiet hum, no longer broken, no longer wild. Her father looked at her with pride shining in his golden eyes. "You have done what none before you could." Lyra smiled, exhaustion and hope mingling in her chest. "The Keeper's oath was never meant to bind us. It's a responsibility to protect, not imprison." Corin, standing beside her, reached out to brush a strand of hair from her face, and together, "We'll guard this new time, one where all timelines can coexist." The scarred reflection's final echo whispered on the wind, a soft promise rather than a threat. "You have rewritten fate itself, but remember, every beginning carries the shadow of an ending." Lyra nodded. "Then we will be ready." As the first true dawn painted the sky, the Timekeeper's daughter raised the chronolium high. Beneath the crimson skies, now fading into light, the forgotten chronicle became a legend reborn. And in that moment, time was theirs once more. Would you like me to create an epilogue, delve into character backstories, or craft a sequel setup? Here's an epilogue to close out Beneath the Crimson Skies, the forgotten chronicles of the Timekeeper's daughter. Epilogue, echoes beyond time. Years had passed since Lyra Valamire rewove the spiral and restored balance to time itself. The realms flourished under skies that shifted from crimson to sapphire, a reminder that even the deepest wounds could heal. Lyra, now the High Timekeeper, walked among the people of Eldro Keep, her copper hair streaked with silver but her eyes still bright with fire. Corin remained by her side, not just a paradox, but a living symbol of hope that no timeline was ever truly lost. In the quiet moments, Lyra would visit the pendulum chamber, where the chronolium rested in its cradle, a beacon for all who sought the truth of time. She traced the familiar glyphs carved into its surface, feeling the steady pulse of countless lives intertwined. A new generation gathered around her, apprentices eager to learn the secrets of time's delicate dance. Lyra smiled, knowing the story was far from over. Because beneath every ending lay a beginning, and beneath every sky, crimson or clear, the forgotten chronicles waited to be told again. If you want, I can help expand on any part, write some scenes focusing on side characters, or brainstorm ideas for a sequel. Since the main story and epilogue have been completed, I'll start a sequel setup continuing the world and mysteries introduced. Sequel prologue, shadows beneath the new dawn. The crimson skies had faded, but beneath the surface of time's new weave, darker threads stirred. Far from Eldro Keep, in a forgotten pocket of the spiral, a silent alarm pulsed, a fracture unhealed, a shadow unbound. A whisper on the wind carried a warning. The Timekeeper's daughter may have restored balance, but some echoes refused to fade. In the depths of the void strand, a realm between realms, a figure awoke, not bound by past rules, not limited by timelines. A new force was rising. And the chronicle was far from finished. Would you like me to continue developing this sequel story, or focus on any specific character or event in the new timeline? Here's the next part of the sequel. Sequel Chapter 1, The Void Strand Awakens. Darkness curled like smoke around the crystalline shards scattered across the endless blackness of the void strand. Time here was a whisper, a faint echo of moments long forgotten. A figure stirred among the shards, tall, cloaked in shifting shadows, with eyes glowing a cold silver. They reached out, fingertips brushing the fragments. Each shard reflected a different timeline, a different possibility. "The weave is incomplete," the figure murmured, "and I will be its reckoning." Far away, beyond the spiral's light, an ancient clock began to tick once more, counting down to a reckoning no one yet saw coming. Want me to continue building this sequel chapter by chapter? Here's sequel chapter 2, The Gathering Storm, continuing the story. The silver-eyed figure moved through the void strand like a shadow threading between broken moments. Each step disturbed the shards of fractured time, sending ripples of forgotten memories cascading through the void. Meanwhile, in Eldro Keep, Lyra felt the first tremors, faint ripples in the chronolium's glow, like a whisper from the farthest edge of time. "Something stirs," she told Corin, who stood beside her, eyes sharp and ready. "It's a fracture we didn't mend," Corin said grimly. "The spiral has secrets even we don't know." The apprentices gathered around, sensing the unease in the air. Lyra raised the chronolume, its light flickering in response. "We must prepare," she said. "The forgotten chronicle is calling us again." Far beyond, in the heart of the void strand, the silver-eyed figure smiled, a cold, cruel curve. "Let the reckoning begin. Would you like to keep going, or explore what the silver-eyed figure's motives and identity might be?" Here's sequel chapter 3, Threads of Shadow, continuing the story. The shadows in the void strand thickened, weaving themselves into shapes both beautiful and terrifying. The silver-eyed figure lifted a hand, and the shards of fractured time obeyed, spinning faster, coalescing into a swirling tempest. Back in Eldro Keep, Lyra and Corin convened with the apprentices in the Hall of Time, the walls alive with glowing glyphs that shifted with every passing moment. "We face a threat born from the remnants of erased timelines," Lyra explained, her voice steady despite the tension, "a force that thrives in the spaces between seconds." Corin stepped forward, his mirrored blade glinting in the ambient light. "Our enemy seeks to unravel the new time we built. If they succeed, all timelines could collapse into chaos." Suddenly, the chronolume flared, projecting a vision into the air, the silver-eyed figure standing amid the void strand, raising a hand as shards turned into sharp blades. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "We need to find them, before the reckoning destroys everything." The apprentices exchanged determined looks. The battle for time's future was only beginning. "Want me to continue with chapter 4, or focus on a character's backstory or new allies?" Here's sequel chapter 4, Allies in the Rift, continuing the story. The halls of Eldro Keep hummed with urgency as Lyra and Corin prepared their small team of apprentices for the journey ahead. Time was fracturing, and the enemy lurked where even the keepers dared not tread. "We'll need guides," Corin said, folding his mirrored blade. "Those who know the void strand's hidden pathways." Lyra nodded. "I've heard whispers of the Riftwalkers, a secretive order who slip between moments like ghosts. If anyone can help us navigate the void strand, it's them." The apprentices exchanged curious glances, eager for the challenge. Before they could leave, a sudden pulse surged through the chronolume. A figure appeared in the flickering light, tall, cloaked, with eyes that shimmered like twilight. "I am Melis," the visitor said, "a Riftwalker. I have been watching. The reckoning you fear is closer than you think." Lyra stepped forward, studying Melis. "Will you help us?" Melis smiled faintly. "The threads of fate are tangled, but even shadows can become light when guided by the right hand." Together, they prepared to step into the void strand, into the heart of the unraveling time. Would you like to continue with chapter 5, or focus on developing Melis or the Riftwalkers? Here's sequel chapter 5, Into the Void Strand, continuing the story. Lyra, Corin, Melis, and the apprentices stood before the shimmering veil that marked the entrance to the void strand, a swirling portal of fractured moments and endless darkness. With a steadying breath, Lyra raised the chronolume. Its light pierced the veil, creating a narrow path through the chaos. One by one, they stepped through. The void strand greeted them with a disorienting silence, broken only by distant echoes of forgotten times. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, twisting and weaving through shards of shattered moments. Melis moved with practiced grace, her steps barely stirring the mist. "Stay close," she warned. "The void strand is alive, and it will test your fears." Suddenly, the ground beneath them rippled. From the darkness emerged twisted creatures born of erased memories, time race, their forms shifting like smoke, their eyes empty voids. Corin drew his mirrored blade, ready to defend. Lyra's grip tightened on the chronolume, its light flaring bright. The battle for the future of time had truly begun. Would you like me to continue with chapter 6, or perhaps write a detailed scene of the battle or character interactions? Here's sequel chapter 6, The Heart of the Rift, continuing the story. The time wraiths surged forward, their forms flickering like broken signals across the void strand's endless dark. Corin's mirrored blade cut through the shadowy figures, each strike sending ripples that momentarily restored fragments of forgotten memories. Lyra focused the chronolume's light into a beacon, illuminating the battlefield with a warmth that seemed to stitch together the unraveling moments. Around them, the fractured shards of time pulsed in response, revealing a distant glow, the heart of the rift. "That's our destination," Melis said urgently. "If we can reach the heart and stabilize it, We might stop the reckoning. The group fought their way forward, the time wraiths relentless but faltering against the combined strength of light and steel. The air crackled as time itself bent, moments folding and unfolding like the pages of a fragile book. At last, they reached the heart, a massive, pulsating core of swirling energy, tethered by fragile threads to countless timelines. Lyra stepped forward, placing the chronolium against the heart, its light intertwined with the core's pulse, weaving a new pattern, a lifeline for the fractured spiral. But the silver-eyed figure emerged from the shadows, blocking their path. "This ends now," the figure hissed. "You cannot mend what was never meant to be whole." Lyra squared her shoulders. "We will fight for every second." The reckoning had arrived. Want to continue, or focus on a showdown scene or deeper exploration of the silver-eyed figure's past?